B.A History to Enterprise Cloud Architect at Google, Munich. How?
If it hadn't been Google, it had been some other company. In fact, I had 3 offers and I picked Google. I mean, I can sketch you the path. The path is... I know CIOs who have a degree in music. So this idea that you do a degree, which is a point in time, a paper that says on this day, in this time, this guy has taken 10 courses in history. I don't think that should define your career.
Cognizant laid off 11,000 employees, stating that they will replace them with AI. How would you prepare for something like this?
If you today are doing a job which is mostly, you are just playing with fire, you will be laid off at some point. For those people who missed the train, who didn't see it in their face, I would just say,
welcome.
thank you.
It's lovely to have you here, and you're the first guest on this podcast.
It's my honor.
Yeah, it's really our pleasure to host you. Quick introduction about you, and then maybe we can jump into some questions that I have personally.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, very happy to see you, see your team here, see this company, see you guys grow. My introduction is I'm Kiran Kulkarni. Work with Google for the last 3 years in Germany. Have had a 20-year career spanning 3 continents, several roles. We can talk about that in more detail in the next period of time. And then now, yeah, and I'm here and I'm very excited to see and meet you guys.
Okay, lovely. Let's talk about your childhood a little bit.
Sure.
Were you a very studious person while growing up?
So what does studious mean to you?
Academically inclined.
Yes, I would say academically inclined. So in the sense that I had no interest in sport.
Okay, so straight A's everywhere.
Probably A's and B's.
Okay.
Mostly A's and some B's thrown in.
Okay.
But I had very academically inclined friends for sure.
Okay.
So I used to hang around with. It's probably not a coincidence that all of my friends except me have a PhD.
Okay.
And my wife tells me, because she has a PhD,
Mm-hmm.
that there is something about my personality that I hang out with people with a certain trait.
Okay.
So whether I was academically inclined or not, I definitely was hanging out with people who were academically inclined.
How would you classify yourself? A first bencher or a last bencher? Because there is this common last bench syndrome that exists in India. I mean, everywhere.
Right.
So how would you classify yourself?
So literally I was the first bencher
Mm-hmm.
because of my short height.
Okay.
But in my school time, I probably was not the kid who would break any laws.
Ah,
Because the last bencher figuratively means people who are the lawbreakers, and I wasn't one of them.
correct.
I was happy to be a status quoist.
Nice. So, schooling in India, and how about your university education? What did you do? Where did you do it?
I joined. So after my 10th grade, I did science, and I realized that that's the one thing I did not want to do.
Okay.
So then the question was what, and I had a strong inclination towards history.
Okay.
So I did B.A History, Political Science, Economics. Then I did Masters in Social Work. I thought I would go work with the Narmada Bachao Andolan or something like that. I had very strong views. I still have.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in Gujarat. So in Gujarat, you have to earn your dollars.
Correct.
So all of my friends were taking their GRE, GMAT. I got a job and I said, okay, when is the next GRE exam? Let's take that. And soon enough, I found myself in the US to do an MBA. The
Okay.
idea was to go to the US, not to do anything else. The
Oh.
MBA was the way to get there. And from an MBA, then you need a job, so you figured out. And then if you are a brown kid in US and Chicago
Mm-hmm.
in 2000, then everybody is going to offer you a computer job.
Right.
Right.
Makes sense. Stereotypical.
So that's how my journey started.
Perfect. In recent times when I've had conversations with you, you said, Pranav, this is the era of micro certifications,
Correct.
right? What is your opinion now? Because you did an MBA. What's your opinion on degrees in general now? as well as what's your opinion on the micro certifications era?
Yeah, I mean, I a degree is a point in time.
Okay.
There is a date on which you get a degree,
Right.
but the learning cannot stop.
Okay. Lovely.
20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, you would graduate, and especially if you're like my dad was a mechanical engineer.
Hmm.
He understood boilers, boiler technologies
Okay.
to generate heat energy for plants, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the time he was in his 60s, 50s, the boiler technology had not changed.
Okay.
Now, if you were take any field, right? You can have a degree in anything. In the next 5 years, all of what you studied is irrelevant. It's not relevant anymore.
Okay.
So that's my view on degree. So degree is a point in time. I think your journey is forever. Your
Yeah.
learning has to be forever.
But there's sort of this trend today, wherein if you're a dropout, you're cool. Oh, wait, sorry. If you're a dropout and you're doing something, maybe you founded a startup or you joined a business, you're cool. So what's your view on that, about dropouts?
I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay.
This comes probably from Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them were dropouts.
Okay.
They had something that the US offers, which is called a delayed graduation or
A deferred something.
deferred graduation.
Right.
So all first, these were extremely smart kids
Mm-hmm.
who, I mean, including that Zuckerberg, right?
Mhm.
They went to Harvard.
Right. Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
These were at the pinnacle of their academic careers.
Okay.
These people were motivated, disciplined, had whatever. They were just too impatient and they saw something and they just deferred their graduation for something else. That backup plan worked so well for them that they didn't have the time to complete it.
Okay.
Right? They were not dropouts. And I don't think this idea for dropout work. I don't believe, as I said, much in the degree as a final destination.
Right.
But
So-
you've started something, dropping out because A or B did it
Mhm.
is not a recipe for success, right?
Right. So, you said the most important thing for you was that you wanted to be in the US. MBA was just a cause or something.
A path to the
A
US.
path to the US. How colorful was your life in the US? How would you describe your life?
I mean, look, if you are, I went to the US when 1997, 97, 98.
Mm-hmm.
98, there was no YouTube.
Okay.
There was no Google search. Any of these things, of course, there was no Facebook, of course, none of this current social media. So there was no idea of what a foreign country is like. There was a once in a week Pranay Roy show called The World This Week. I don't know if you remember this. You're too young for this. That was the window to the entire world
Okay.
in 97 for a 20-year-old kid in India. So my expectation was that I'll go to Chicago and there'll be Baywatch, right? That this glamorized vision of Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they're all there on the beach, everybody has a perfect body,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the fun life and so on. And of course, then we know that wasn't the reality. But I had fun. I had fun in terms of I had made a lot of good relationships. In India, everybody is too. I was definitely too protected.
Okay.
So there was a lot of color in my life in terms of there was no protection anymore. So if I don't cook, there's no food.
I understand.
If I don't study, then there is no grade. If there's no grade, there's no scholarship. I need to go back to India because I was on a scholarship.
Okay.
So those things which are taken for granted here were not there. And that was my chance to grow up as well.
Right. I've heard you talk a lot about exposure, right? And I personally come from the opinion that having a mentor is also a sort of a window to exposure, right? Did you have a mentor throughout this phase of your life?
Oh yeah, I had tons, and I continue to have them.
Okay. Could you highlight maybe the top few?
I'd like to expand this question a bit.
Sure.
There are 3 things that I have had, and I would recommend others to have:
Okay.
coach, mentor, and sponsor.
Right.
We can explain it in just very simple words. The coach talks with you,
Okay.
the sponsor talks about you,
Right.
and the mentor talks to you.
Right.
Right? And we need all these 3 people in our lives. We need to identify these people and go seek them. I think they'll be very helpful. Yeah.
Honestly, as I was saying, never really categorized the kind of influential people you've had in our lives. We see somebody and we say, hey, I can learn something from him. He can be my mentor. Right. But seeing them as a sponsor, as a mentor, and as a coach, that's a whole new perspective altogether.
Right.
So,
and a lot of times in my own career, I've had these distinctions are of course not always clear to me. I've had people who I thought were mentors, but actually they were also a combination of sponsors, mentors, and coaches.
right.
And it was just a very organic relationship that grew. One was my professor during my college times. He
Mhm.
was himself a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
So very strong influence on me and influenced my ideas on what I want to do with my career. So yeah, and he was my sponsor. He could talk and he could say, this kid, I can trust him, so on, right? So all of us, when we are in our college, we have 1 or 2 professors that, in my case, it happened like this. The company came to the campus interview. They first asked the dean of the college, I know they have a score and kids
Correct.
are rated and there's a brochure and
Yeah.
who would you tell me is your best child?
The company asked the dean.
The dean,
Okay.
right? And the dean, I mean, this is back, maybe it's not even fair to ask, but these are old friends and they said, hey, who would you trust? By the way, this company was Reliance. This was back in 1997 and this is the campus interview, and the dean just said, these 3, 4, 5 kids, these are the good guys. I mean, these are what I would. He was my sponsor unknowingly.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, I still had to clear the interview.
Sure. Yeah.
I still, it may be the Wankhede pitch or the Chidambaram's pitch, but I still have to hit a 6.
Correct. Makes sense.
Right?
Right.
But at least somebody prepared the pitch.
Right. The sort of recommendation definitely pushes
Correct.
things along. You've also spoken to me a couple of times about this one figure in your life. His name is Atul Chitnis.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also had a lot of influence on you.
Yes, yeah.
Can you tell us about him first? And then go on to tell me about how he influenced your life.
So Atul was, he was a, when I was growing up, he was a businessman
Mhm.
in a family which never did any business, or at least I didn't know anybody.
Okay.
So that way he was quite an influential person. He was also very strong. He had strong opinions. I had strong opinions. So you get along. Sometimes your opinions may not match, but at least you would love to talk to him.
Yeah.
In general, he has always been somebody. We have had few conversations,
Okay.
but very powerful ones. So there are some people who you don't get to meet much or talk much, but those few 5 or 6 times. In hindsight, what was happening was that he had a lot more exposure.
Okay.
And so the few conversations, I got certainly a lot of exposure. Right.
So, would you categorize him as a mentor, a sponsor, or a coach?
He was not a sponsor.
Okay.
I mean, he couldn't be a sponsor. He couldn't go and talk to him. I didn't need any sponsorship from him. He couldn't.
Correct.
He was definitely not a coach.
Okay.
I would classify him as a mentor. So he would generally talk, and for him it was a conversation. For me, that was mentorship.
So, when we do talk about mentors and coaches and all of these people, right, their part becomes extremely pivotal when you're sometimes in your down lows, right? When you have setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Collect a time in your life where you've faced, a setback, and it's like I'm in my, I've hit my rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with it? What's Kiran's magic secret sauce to dealing with rock bottoms? What's your mindset like?
For me, the mindset was I'm in this,
Mm-hmm.
and only I can fix this. And I have it. I have to believe in myself to fix it. Right? What also helped me
Mm-hmm.
was I started going to Chinmaya Mission
Chinmaya Mission.
in Chicago.
Okay.
It was very helpful to every Sunday listen to some verse in Bhagavad Gita or listen to something. And funnily enough, when you're rock bottom, very emotional, doesn't matter what they are saying, you feel that relates exactly to your situation.
Right. Relate
He
to
will
it.
pick some random shloka from a random chapter in Bhagavad Gita, and you say, "Oh, that's exactly my point."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What I would be, what I'm going through right now.
Correct.
And somehow I found the courage to just hang in there. And once you hang in there, and I think one of my mentors, or one of the few mentors, few conversations that I had, a guy called Abhijit, you should also meet him,
Mhm.
right? And he said, Kiran, go to India. I mean, I was almost there in the decision,
Mm-hmm.
but he said, go. I mean, go not because it's a failure, but go because it's a bright future there.
Yeah.
And you're struggling here, so you don't have to struggle.
Right.
That was sort of the tipping point. And I said, yeah, if he says, maybe that's the right thing for me. And that one decision just changed the trajectory of my career. So I came to India, found a good job,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is history, so to speak.
Where did you start working? As soon as you landed in India, what was your first job?
I started working in a company called Symphony Services here in Bangalore.
Okay.
And then, I got married, got a kid, a house, a car, loans. And then my wife said, okay, she got something in Germany, so we went to Germany. But yeah, I mean, just after that, but what happened was in my life, I had faced the tough situation,
Mm-hmm.
and I understood that jobs are never to be taken for granted.
Okay.
I understood the value of, just being useful to somebody, and constantly having to prove your value. No, don't take anything for granted. And touchwood, I think that's something that stayed with me, and because of which I've never had to lose a job again. In fact, rock bottom. One of the problems of rock bottoms in your life is, in my case, I thought something was wrong with me.
Right. I get it. Yeah.
Right? Something is wrong with me that the whole world has a job and I don't. Because you only see all the people who have a job.
Yeah. Correct.
And so finally, when somebody that you trust comes and says, hey, it's not the end, and you can do still, there's a life ahead of you, go to India. And then I came, and there was a big emotional, psychological change to say, hey, look at all these guys, I'm actually quite good.
Yeah. B.A History to Enterprise Cloud Architect
Hmm.
at Google, Munich.
Hmm.
Kaisa. How?
Yeah, it was not planned, if that's the question. It was not.
Of course.
When I went to take my first class in B.A History, I didn't think in 2023 or 24 January I'll be sitting as a cloud architect somewhere. I mean, I can sketch you the path. The path is do good US jana hai, right? Actually, I was very eager at that point to do social work.
Okay.
Some crazy twist of events, and I got a job in industry. And my boss in my first job in Reliance happened to be from the IIM.
Oh.
And so in India, if you do masters in social work, you get into the HR departments of
Yes.
any large company. In HR departments of somebody like Reliance, you may, again, these are small things which lead to big impact, and I got exposure.
Yeah.
Somebody said, kid, you can do GRE or GMAT by that
Mm.
time. Took a GMAT, got a decent score to the US, and then the US you can't do social work.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right? Then suddenly realize, अरे अब तो computer करना पड़ेगा,
Mm.
right? So that's how, then somebody said, hey, Excel का एक backend होता है VBA, Visual Basic for Applications.
Hmm.
Dot दबाओ function आ जाता है.
Right.
So I said, ये तो कर सकते हैं. In fact, I found that quite easy.
Okay.
Right? It was very structured, very easy. And in the world of quant and finance and everything, you need these kind of people. I mean, back then, it was a lot of demand for these kind of people, and I got in.
Do you sort of categorize your entry into Google as one of those right place, right time sort of scenarios?
No. If it hadn't been Google, it had been some other company. In fact, I had 3 offers, and I picked Google. I mean, it's just not. Yeah, it's a company and it's a job, and there are other jobs in other companies.
Lovely.
I mean, it's a great company. I'm not.
No, I get that, of course.
All I'm saying is, it's not the be all and the end all of the universe.
Okay. So is there a sense of achievement for you?
There is a sense of achievement, of course. It's a very rarefied
Correct.
place to be in. The interviews are tough. Success rates are low.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes. But I do also know that I had a lot of interview capital, cultural capital built in up to that point.
Right.
That this was just another job
Okay.
in the progression of my career, another step in the progression of my career.
Okay.
And this is where most things are. There's no such thing as big bangs and all these dream things. You build up to something,
Mhm.
and then becomes the next logical step for you. That's how I saw it.
Right. We'll definitely get to your Google interviews because I really want to know how that went. But what was the first point of contact to Google or the recruiters? Did you initiate it?
I was running the cloud team for a TV company called Crezam.
Okay.
That was built on AWS, a competitor to Google.
Okay.
Gave a talk in Vegas.
Okay.
The AWS reInvent conference happens every year. And incidentally, Google said, okay, we are going to change our hiring strategy or whatever, have a hiring strategy that says, go pick industry experts that know cloud, but industry experts that know cloud, because we want to build trusted advisory. So some recruiter probably got a list of names or was asked to look for names.
Mhm.
If you are in Munich and if you say I want in media an industry expert who knows cloud, then my LinkedIn profile will show up.
Mhm.
Because LinkedIn will figure out this is the guy who gave a reInvent talk. So anyway, I was on a flight to India 4 years ago, and then the stewardess is saying, fasten your seatbelt, close your phone, shut down, whatever.
Right. Right.
And then I get a call from this Google recruiter to say,
On the flight.
yeah, on the flight. Okay. Hey, would you be interested? I said, yeah.
So you would say that because you were at that AWS talk, you could make it into Google?
I definitely would not have been headhunted, or I wouldn't have shown up in their LinkedIn search or
Okay.
whatever search they must have done.
Mhm.
Or maybe I would have, it would have been more difficult.
Why didn't you continue in arts? Is there no opportunity in arts today?
I know CIOs,
Mhm.
literally CIOs, who have a degree in music. So this idea that you do a degree, which is a point in time,
Mhm.
a paper that says on this day, in this time, this guy has taken 10 courses in history. I don't think that should define your career,
That makes sense.
right? That's all a degree is. It's a point in time recognition of 8 semesters of effort or whatever, 10 semesters of effort,
Right.
right? None of that is relevant in the next 10 years. In fact, next 10 semesters nowadays. Right? So you should study arts if you like the arts.
Mhm.
Right? You should study whatever because you like to study that. But what you're essentially doing is looking for some skills.
Absolutely.
And those skills, it depends on you on how you apply that.
Quick follow-up. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Skills over experience or experience over skills?
More and more, it's going to be skills.
It's going to be skills.
It is skills already, it's going to be even more.
Okay.
I like to be very specific about what we mean with words. Words have power.
Right.
When people say experience, they use it loosely to mean number of years.
Correct.
That's not experience, right? And therefore skills will drop.
Right.
With experience, if you if somebody, my kid is one a good example. He started Python in the 10th grade, 9th grade maybe, right? By the time he and his classmates graduate, they already have 5 years of Python experience.
Correct.
So they're going to beat me,
Hmm.
hands down, in any Python coding. I bet that they're going to beat most Google Cloud architects who are 50 plus on Python coding.
That's a big bet.
Yeah.
The alphabet.
Yeah. Right? I don't want to undermine. What I'm saying is these principal architects in Google, they have come with different backgrounds, different sets of experience, and maybe 5% of them have built their entire careers doing Python, but most of them, they bring networking experience. They won't do, but in that particular skill, these kids are better.
Right.
So they are going to beat that experience. If you were to ask them to write the smartest Python program, that college kid is going to beat,
Correct.
right? Because in that very narrow sphere, they have more skill.
Google classifies as a dream employer today. Right?
Okay.
And for an average engineering student today, or even post-engineering, MTech, whoever, just out of college, it's their dream, right? Can you walk us through your entire onboarding process of Google, and what are those highlight points that you think that the audience should know about?
So I would say, first and foremost, like any very good company, there are, if people go on YouTube, there are more than like a few hundred videos on how to take a Google interview.
Correct.
Go to the official Google channel, hiring channel.
Okay.
They give you a lot of tips. It's for $100 trillion, whatever, $100 billion company. The roles are so diverse
Right.
that there is no one interview pattern or one. I mean, I'm a cloud architect.
Yeah.
My interviews are completely different than somebody going for an engineering role versus an Android Auto role versus a YouTube role, which is a media company.
Right.
However, there are certain key traits that the company is looking for as standard traits,
Mhm.
and people should definitely not, either me or anybody else, there are official channels,
Okay.
so go for it. Do one thing, do it well, know something about it. A huge percentage of jobs, people around me, and in general, this is what people know, I experience this. Huge percentage of people have PhDs. You don't get to a PhD being a generalist.
Correct.
So you'll be, now forget Google, just anybody who, you're more likely to see a guy or a girl who has a PhD interviewing you. As much as they want to avoid it, there's a certain bias you're facing. Right? I mean,
Right.
As much as people, and of course the whole process, in my experience, is also to weed out the big talkers and the guys who talk well in an interview are exactly the people we don't want. The interview is supposed to be about your skill,
Right.
not about how well you can present yourself in an interview.
When you were giving your interviews, what were the kind of questions you were met with? And more importantly, what is that one key thing that kind of differentiated the interview process of Google versus anybody else out in the market?
So first of all, I wouldn't say Google is anything different.
Okay.
I bet a lot of Silicon Valley companies, tech companies in
Mhm.
Silicon Valley have a very similar process.
Okay.
Google interviews are, in my experience, not too different from AWS interviews and not very different from NVIDIA or Databricks or
Right.
Snowflake or any of these interviews. So I wouldn't talk about Google.
Mhm.
I would talk about the larger big tech Silicon Valley
Sure.
companies,
Absolutely.
which is probably more helpful.
Yeah.
So again, what they're looking for interest, passion, something that you can demonstrate, especially if you're a college graduate,
Mm-hmm.
right? In general, my bias is if you say you know Python, show me your open source code, show me your GitHub library.
Makes sense.
You can talk million things, but let's see your GitHub library, your contribution, and those are the things that will land you. So if you're in a college already and preparing for these big tech interviews, if you're really passionate,
Mm-hmm.
then contribute to the open source.
Right.
You'll get the exposure, you'll be part of these conversations, and it's available to everybody.
So, if you're in college, you would be better off if you were, contributing more onto the open source with respect to projects and everything. So, Google essentially looks at, basically the big tech companies essentially look at what kind of impact you're doing outside of your curriculum.
Right. And this comes back, I'm going to circle back to your previous question of how important degrees are.
Okay.
A degree, as I said, is a point in time piece of paper.
Yeah.
I want to take one step back,
Mm-hmm.
talk about the whole thing called industrialization of education.
Okay.
Let's go back 1750s. For 1,500, 700 years before the advent of Industrial Revolution, how would you get educated? Do you have any guesses?
No idea.
So, or if your father has a shop, you just go to the shop. There's no concept of child labor. You just go and you pick up the skills. By the time you're 15, 16, 17, at some point you're ready to take up the shop.
Correct.
That's how it happened. How did education happen? Education was the requirement of the Industrial Revolution. We needed compliant, disciplined factory workers
Okay.
who would obey orders, who would follow it to the T, right? And then go home and not complain,
Right.
right? So we created an education system that resembles a factory system. There's a batching process.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2007 batch, 2006 batch. There's a grading process, quality A, B, C, D, E,
Right.
right? And what are we getting graded for? For spitting out a curriculum,
Correct. Yeah. Rote learning.
rote learning.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, in today's world, we are in what I would call a post-industrial world.
Okay.
This cycles back to a lot of your previous questions. In a post-industrial world, so this worked for the last 200 years. Because you need a big bridge to be built. You need all these civil engineers. Don't ask questions. Some architect is designing, implement this bridge.
Right.
Right? But today, in the world of AI and everything, you need people who will challenge the status quo.
Right.
Right? And you need people who really enjoy what they're doing. So therefore, you are going to find, how do I know that you really enjoy your stuff? Well, if you're enjoying it, then you're writing open source code. You're doing something around it.
Okay. Right. That makes sense.
Otherwise, you're just another cog in the wheel.
Right.
And your papa is very happy, your mommy may be very happy that you got a great job. You are just 10 years before getting fired.
Right.
Because 10 years later, some 18-year-old kid is going to be cheaper, better, and faster than you.
Right.
Right? And that's coming now the whole circle back, right?
Correct.
If you are a big tech or any company
Mm-hmm.
with a very strong HR and a lot of brand in the market, who do you want? Another cog in a wheel or somebody who can think independently and
Right.
and do something with that, who have some passion to do something.
Curiosity, passion, challenging the status quo, some of the trademarks that maybe all big techs look for while picking people out. During your interview process, what was that one question that you were not prepared for? Absolutely not prepared for? Or something that was a surprise to you? You were interviewing for an enterprise cloud architect role.
Hmm.
What was that one question that you were, taken aback by?
There's no enigma around this interview process. The enigma comes because you're ill prepared, and it's your mistake.
Right. Absolutely.
It's your mistake in this world of YouTube and Google search
Yeah.
that you did not take the time to understand what kind of questions they're going to ask and what they expect.
Right.
That's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
An interview here is just an interview.
There's nothing really eye-opening about this,
nothing.
right?
Yeah.
There's certain aura about Google's culture, right? People look forward to being in that culture. So what's the onboarding like? And what's the culture like? Why is it so hyped up? And does it deserve the hype that it's gotten?
Yeah. In fact, if you're okay, may I challenge you a bit?
Absolutely. Please.
There is equal of a hype against Google in the Silicon Valley.
No way.
There is. You can Google search. Back in 2024, right? So 2020, 2021, they said there are a bunch of articles of people who got so frustrated with Google's bureaucracy, they left Google, and half of OpenAI is ex-Google.
Okay.
Or some random number. I think it's more than half.
Okay.
These are people who said it's too bureaucratic. So this hype,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure is correct.
Okay.
I don't want to definitely badmouth Google.
Right.
It's a great company.
Absolutely.
All I'm saying is all companies have a certain culture, and some people like it. And $100 billion company is not going to be as agile and as quick moving and take as many risks as an OpenAI or any other smaller company. So there's nothing good or bad about it. I'm just saying that there's a hype, which this idea that there's a hype is also misplaced.
Okay.
For certain people, it's a great company. For other people, it's a frustrating place to be. And there's enough and more people who quit every year.
Okay.
I just read the headline. I don't know anything, of course, about. I just read the headline. The highest paid ex-Google executive now joins the billionaire club. Then I read the first two paragraphs. This guy was the highest paid Google executive. For whatever reason, quit the company because he wanted to grow beyond this bureaucracy or whatever. He got new opportunities. Something.
Right.
And now he's the CEO of, I think, NVIDIA.
Nikesh Arora.
So there's enough and more people who quit all the time.
Okay.
So now that we've established, to me at least, it's a company, it's a great company. Right? I want to just have this clarity for people that I think what they confuse culture here is good food and gym and massage and sauna.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those are not markers of culture.
Okay.
Those are perks,
Makes sense.
right? So
Right.
let's not confuse perks with culture.
Right.
Yes, and there are good perks, of course. So now what's your question?
Okay. The reason I brought this up again is one of our previous conversations, you defined Google as the world's biggest research institute.
Yes, that's true.
How?
Because it has a lot of PhDs, because the founders are PhDs, they see themselves, Google sees itself as sort of there's a whole lot of profit that comes, and that profit allows Google to be at the forefront of the next generation of research.
Okay.
And that's how you can compete. That's the way you can compete and outpace and sort of shine your competition. And that's why you don't need generalists. You need people
Specialists.
who are specializing in something and who are world beaters. So, yeah.
Right. We talked a lot about your employment at Google. We talked a lot about its culture, interviews, also about your entire career trajectory till now. Let's go back a little. I deliberately want to go back at this point. You're maybe 5 years into your career, right? And it's 2023, not 2024, but 2023, because it's known as the era of layoffs. And layoffs which have been caused by the advent of AI, right? As a matter of fact, in India, Cognizant laid off 11,000 employees, stating that they will replace them with AI. How would you prepare for something like this in the face of layoffs?
Layoffs have happened every 3, 5, 7 years.
Okay.
It's new for us, maybe, because it wasn't happening here. But hey, if your salaries are going to rise, the risks are also going to rise.
Correct.
Have you heard of Luddites?
I'm sorry?
Luddites.
Luddites.
Martin Ludd was a guy who led a bunch of, I think, coal workers or something,
Okay.
because they were getting laid off by steam engines 300 years ago.
Okay.
So you can be a Luddite, and I'm not saying that anybody who's afraid of layoff is a being Luddite, but I'm just saying that since 300 years, engines have, or industrial revolution has replaced jobs and jobs from humans with machines.
Sure. Yeah.
Over the last 200 years, employment has only increased.
Correct.
When you are taking an eagle perspective, 10,000 feet view, every year unemployment is only reducing or remaining stagnant at 2 or 3% of the population.
Yes.
The long-term trend of unemployment has not changed. So if I am the guy in 2023 that's getting affected, I should remember that in the bigger picture, this argument that machine is going to replace jobs and there's no more jobs has been around for 300 years.
Right.
It hasn't come true.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know the future. Maybe the AI this time it's different. Who knows?
Okay.
But it's just, I would take comfort in the fact that 300 years of human history shows that was not the end of the world.
Okay.
That's first.
Sure.
Second, then I would say go back and do it like anything else, right? You go back and analyze what made you, what about your job was so susceptible to layoffs. Here's the thing, right? If you today are doing a job which is mostly instruction based, you are just playing with fire. You will be laid off at some point. So these people probably should have seen it coming and should have prepared for it. I mean, I would have. I mean, I know with LLMs, a lot of my job is going to be automated.
Correct.
Right? A lot of what so I can't wait until 2026.
Yeah.
I need to go and acquire new skills today.
Okay.
And that's what, right? Instead of relying on some random degree,
Yeah.
I need to go get some micro certificates today.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I can learn prompt engineering today.
Yeah.
And keep myself relevant for the next set of jobs. So, coming back to this question, in 2023, for those people who missed the train, who didn't see it in their face, who were those 11,000 people or 100,000 people or the employer, right? I would just say, okay, now is the time to go back, get some new certificates, new skills, and there's enough and more jobs, especially in India, where we are seeing a 6-7% economic growth.
Correct.
There's jobs.
If you had to set an hourly rate for yourself, for your services, what would it be?
Probably $175 to $200 an hour.
How did you arrive at that number?
$200 an hour is roughly what, $1,500, $600 a day.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the top end of the consulting daily rate is between $1,200-$1,300 from a large company, and I would bet my skill sets to be 10-20% better than them.
Okay, so that's how you arrive at those numbers. You look at maybe market trends.
Correct. I mean, I would say that question is for me a question about, am I realistic do I even know what my value is in the market?
Correct.
Right? And if I haven't really thought about it, by the way, it's a great question.
Right.
I think Kunal Shah talked about this, that most people don't know.
Correct.
And I know because in where I live, everybody knows. So $1,200 is a lot of money for one day of work.
Right.
So you know the daily rates, you know, and you are competing against this, and you know that the machine will do it much cheaper
Yeah.
if there were a machine for this.
Correct.
And therefore, it keeps you on your toes.
What do you want to be doing 5 years down the lane?
See, the 5 years down the line question is a great question. If you see it as somebody reflecting on their ambition, and how clearly have they thought about what their aspirations are.
Okay.
If you have not, if you don't have any aspiration, any
Mhm.
plan,
Mm-hmm.
any vision for where you want to be, it's very tough for you. It's not. This is one of the skills we all need to have. If I were to go to the CEO of Cognizant,
Mm-hmm.
he will give you a number where the company needs to be in 5 years.
That's how clear
That's how clear
the
it is.
vision is.
That's also the mark of a good CEO, a good leader. Right?
Absolutely.
But it's also a question that we are not trained to ask ourselves. By the way, and that's also one of the core coaching conversations.
Okay.
Right? We are not really asking ourselves in 5 years, do I see myself as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's doing this or that? What are the options? How do I reflect on my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, strengths, and where I want to be? And if I were to say 5 years I want to be the CEO of Google Cloud, then clearly I have a very misplaced identity.
Right. Yeah.
Something's wrong here. Or if I were to say 5 years down the line I'm at the same place, that's an invitation to ask a follow-up question. Why? Right?
Yeah.
So that question in itself is not such a bad question. I'm guessing it's also a challenge because a lot of people who are asking
Mm-hmm.
are not seeing it as an invitation
Correct.
to understand the candidate's aspirations.
Yeah.
And the candidates are not prepared to talk or think about what their aspirations for themselves are.
How would you expect a candidate to respond to the weakness question?
The weakness, it's also a great question. Great leaders know what their weaknesses are. And in fact, that's one of the hallmarks of good leadership.
Okay.
A person who says, I talk too much, is aware, and you can expect this person to grow.
Right.
The person who says, I have no weakness, has no future, has no standing. It's a, right?
Yeah.
In fact, if I were the interviewer, I would ask this question, and I don't want to hear about the weakness.
Yeah.
I want to hear, what is this person doing about it?
Okay.
The ability to reflect on one's weakness, to me, is a sign of emotional intelligence.
Lovely. Yeah. This conversation is fantastic. I just want to dig a little deeper, right? If you were to hire today, in an interview, what are those classic traits? Or what is that, maybe that one question that you generally ask to judge that classic trait? Do you interview people like that?
I would de-emphasize in an interview the hard skills, and I would focus more on the ability to learn,
Okay.
the ability to pivot, the ability, and so the agility, those aspects. So because if you have whatever we know today is not going to be relevant 3 years down the line. So
Correct.
I would de-emphasize.
Yeah.
I would also I'm not interested. The guy sitting in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
girl, right? Doesn't. At this point, I'm not interested in having them walk them through the resume.
Mm-hmm.
That's a waste of 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I should have done my homework beforehand. And if I were to draw, I may ask for one or two clarifications. So that's one thing. Now, what I'm looking for is, what was your toughest time and how did you come out of it? What was, give me an example. I would definitely ask them about their passions, their questions, what interests them. And then I would ask them, what have you done that demonstrates that you are passionate about this? And that's a question most people stump at.
Right. Right.
When I ask them what's the hobby, they'll say, oh, I love reading. So, and then the follow-up question is, which is the last book you read? And if you are not quick to
Yeah.
say which is the last book you read, then name the author, then you are bullshitting,
Yeah. Makes sense.
right? And then the rest of the interview is just, yeah, sure.
Is there a concept of born leader?
No,
Are you one?
no.
What is the definition of a leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is not one definition of leader. In my opinion, of course, the understanding of what or who or what is leadership has changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
Our understanding of leaders usually came from the monkey world or the biological world, and our very wrong interpretation of what was happening there.
Okay.
This idea of an alpha male
Right.
came from the monkey world, where there was the alpha monkey or the alpha tiger or the alpha lion
Yeah.
that was dominating everybody else, and that was considered leadership.
Yeah.
It's been proven to be wrong.
Correct.
The alpha male is not the stronger, the bigger, right. The alpha male is somebody who collaborates better,
Correct.
cooperates better.
Yeah.
Those are skills they are not born with. Leadership is a skill.
Mm-hmm.
And now, for people who want to study leaders or want to become leaders, so once you establish it's a skill, the question is, what are the attributes and how do we get it?
Correct.
I would highly recommend a lady called Brene Brown.
Brene Brown.
She's a professor at the University of Houston.
Okay.
She has written a lot of books on vulnerability as an important attribute for a leader.
It's very ironic. I mean, a leader being vulnerable.
And therefore, it's very important that we all read this kind of work. She has TED Talks. She has YouTube talks. I highly encourage people to read it, to go through these. If reading is too dense, there's also, in today's social media world, bite-sized information.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's an acquired skill.
Yeah.
And vulnerability is a key part of that skill. I think the book is called Dare to Lead.
Now that we are on the topic of reading, what's the top 3 books that you would recommend that everybody has to read this?
I mean, there's a book that it came out a few years ago, recent book, called Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. Yeah.
Very good book, especially for youngsters, because it establishes the value of small changes, atomic changes in your habits that can lead to a long-term success. That's the one I would highly recommend. Second, Yuval Harari is amazing. His first book, Homo Sapiens, and the second one, Homo Deus.
Mm-hmm.
So those are 3 books. But if you're interested, he has written a third book called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century.
21 Lessons for the 21st Century.
So these 3, and why I'm recommending it, Atomic Habits is very, like, what should you do tomorrow morning?
Right.
Kind of a book.
Okay.
And what should you do next week? Build your practice.
Mm-hmm.
Very hands-on. On the other hand, Yuval Harari his books are 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
And he gives you a brief history of everything for the last 2,000 years.
Okay.
And I think it's very important to have that broad view, and as well as this micro habit perspective.
Right. Something that you can change tomorrow.
Yeah. What can I do tomorrow? Yuval won't help you with what you should do tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But that framework helps you evaluate the world. It's like, you're seeing the world with a better glasses, with more precision. What's happening around you? That 2,000-year history of how Homo sapiens succeeded.
Yeah.
Is very important to have in the background of everything else we do.
Yeah.
And his next book is Homo Deus, in which he addresses the future of Homo sapiens. And before LLMs came, I think this book came out 2016, 2017, something like that. He already talked about AI. He already talked about the evolution of Homo sapiens as Homo Deus,
Wow.
where he's talking that we are not just being Homo sapiens. We are killing ourselves, so we are becoming all cyborgs, and that's one future for Homo sapiens. And only thinkers and philosophers, humanities professors like you all can and once you read it, of course you can agree or disagree. I love the idea, I love the thought process, and until somebody comes with something different and more convincing, I believe in it.
We're up to the last segment, and this is my favorite question. What's that one piece of advice that you would give to your 18-year-old self?
Sure. So my 18-year-old self was probably different than
Absolutely,
people here, right?
Yeah.
So for him especially, I would say the world respects action more than you would realize. Forward motion.
Yeah.
And these dry intellectual conversations and high spiritual talk will get you some nice cocktails in a party.
Sure.
At some point, get real, get some hard skills, get some hard, more than skills, or skills are of course important, but get motion, be more action oriented.
Okay.
That's what I would definitely, because I thought I have an academic trait in me, and I thought being able to hold these complex thoughts and think these complex subjects would bring me success. It's not wrong, but the world values action more.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time out from your schedule to be here and talk to us about so much today. Immense gratitude from our end, the entire team. Thank you so much for this.
You're most welcome. The pleasure is mine.